Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name's Simon. I'm the founder, co-owner and one of the surf guides at Renegade Surf Travel. We run world-class surf coaching trips in some of the most progression-friendly waves on earth, and if you want to find out more about what we do, please hit the link in the description below. Head over to renegadesurftravel.com and you can see our full schedule and availability over there. Alright, in today's video we're going to be looking at another one of the fundamentals of surfing, and that is your stance. Regardless of whether you are a level 2 surfer, a level 4 surfer, level 5 surfer, your stance is something that you absolutely need to have down in order to take your surfing to the next level. So in this video, we're going to look at what to do, what not to do, and then stick around until the end of the video where I'm going to give you an extra stance related bonus tip that will instantly improve your surfing by 20%. Alright, so first of all we need to understand why having a good stance is so important. The reason it's so important is because it affects everything we do, from generating speed to carving turns and even how you see the wave. Get your stance wrong and even the most basic maneuvers can become difficult. Get it right, however, and you'll find yourself surfing better with less effort required. Now there's 4 key aspects that your stance affects. They are balance, rotation, compression and vision. So we're going to look at a few different aspects of a good functional surf stance and how each of those things is affected. Before we look at what makes up a good solid stance, let's also have a look at what not to do when you stand on a surfboard. Now, for those of you who had lessons as a beginner or have seen beginner lessons being taught on the beach, you've probably seen this position quite a lot. Now, unfortunately, almost everything about that warrior pose stance is not functional for surfing, and we can understand why it's not a good position by revisiting the 4 areas that I just discussed. So firstly, with balance. When we're surfing, if this mat is my surfboard, the balance issue that we face is not a front to back balance issue. The balance issue that we face is a side to side balance issue. And so it doesn't make sense to balance in this position, which allows us to do this. Instead, we want to make sure that we've got one hand over each of the surfboard rails, which allows us to balance the lateral motion of the surfboard. Number 2 is compression. Again, if we're in this position and we want to get into a compressed position, we're going to squat like this. And now we're in that classic poo stance, which nobody wants to surf in. Not only is it not functional, it looks terrible and it's going to make surfing far more difficult. Number 3 would be rotation. Now, if we start in this warrior position with our hips parallel to the way that we're traveling, it makes it very difficult to rotate. Whereas if we turn our hips so that our hips are now facing in the direction that we're traveling, we've unlocked way more rotation potential there, which is going to make it far easier to turn. Finally, number 4 is vision. Now this mostly applies to surfing backhand, but if I'm in this position, I have to look over my left shoulder to see the wave, which is very uncomfortable and actually inhibits a lot of vision. And if we can't see the wave well, we can't surf the wave well. And so again, we need to open our chest, open our hips into the direction of travel, which makes it far easier now for me to look up at the wave and I'm not in this position, which a lot of surfers get caught in. Little side note here, if you came to surfing from snowboarding, this is also a very common issue that we see because snowboarders are also used to having their shoulders and hips parallel to the direction of travel. And the reason for that is that when you're trying to turn on a snowboard, it's much more of a leaning movement. You're going onto the heel side edge or you're going onto the toe side edge. But when we're surfing, turning the surfboard is far more of a rotational movement, and that's why it's important to have our shoulders, hips and chest facing the direction of travel. All right, so now that we understand what not to do, let's look at the foundations that make up a functional stance. So the first one is going to be your foot position. Now, if you imagine this is my surfboard, we've got the nose and the tail here. Your back foot wants to be 90 degrees across the stringer. Your front foot wants to be wider than shoulder width, and we don't want it to be 90 degrees. We don't want it to be 45. We want it somewhere in the middle. around a 30-degree angle, whatever feels comfortable, but the point here is that it's not facing forward, it's not straight across, it's somewhere in the middle. Foundation number 2 would be our weight distribution. So once we've got our comfortable foot position, then in between turns, we want to maintain a neutral weight distribution with equal weight on either foot. That's because when we're surfing, we need to have fluid weight distribution between the feet. And if we start with an equal weight distribution, it becomes far easier to either weight the front foot when we're driving down the line or down the wave, or weight the back foot when we're gonna push into a turn. So in between turns, we want to make sure we're in that neutral position with around 50% on each foot. Number 3 is torso rotation. So as we've already discussed, we don't want our shoulders and hips parallel to the target. We want to make sure that we open our shoulders, open our chest and our hips to face the direction of travel. Now, if you want an easy little mantra to remember here, just think titties to the target. Okay, so number 4 is that we want to have our knees bent and our back knee coming in. If we are too parallel to our direction of travel and we bend our knees, we're going to end up in this poo stance position that we don't want. However, by naturally turning to the direction of travel, as soon as we bend our knees, the back knee comes in and almost starts to kiss the front knee. Now, you don't need to go full Craig Ando here, but by making sure that we've got the torso rotation correct, as soon as you get into a compressed position, it's going to tuck this back leg in, which is not only more functional, but is also going to look a lot better. Number 5 is having a relaxed upper body with one hand over each of our surfboard rails. Now again, we don't want to be in this position. We want to make sure that we've got one hand over each rail, and that's going to put us in a much more relaxed position and allow us to be able to go into turns whichever way it might be. This is our great reset position and where we want to come in between maneuvers. All right, so before we wrap up, as promised, I've got one more bonus tip which will instantly improve your surfing by 20% if you just implement this one thing. Now, I know that sounds far too good to be true, but at Renegade on our coaching trips, we've seen this time and time again, and it's a very common trait of level 2 and level 3 surfers, and that is simply to just have your back foot right on the back of the tail block. A lot of surfers, especially intermediate surfers, will surf with their back foot either just in front of the tail pad or at best in the middle of the tail pad. But look at any of the world's best surfers and their back foot is pushed right up against the tail block of their tail pad. All right guys, so that wraps it up for this video. If you like this kind of content, please hit the like button below, subscribe to the channel and leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought about these stance tips. If you're serious about taking your surfing to the next level in 2025, head over to renegadesurftravel.com and check out our all-inclusive surf coaching trips in the Maldives and now in Indonesia. We're already 75% sold out for 2025, so if you want to get involved, head over there and get in touch, and we would love to surf with you in paradise next year.